Okay, everybody, I welcome you to the YouAreEnough.life podcast. My name is Michael Levitz. I've got Josh on the call today, and I am so happy to have Josh here. I've known you, Josh, since you were a 4 or 5 year old, I think. And so it's just great. Right. You're not making lemonade on my kitchen table from the tree in my backyard anymore. I want to say welcome, but I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself. Josh, just a little bit about you. Who are you in the world? What are you about?
I like to say my first identity is as a Christian, as a disciple of Jesus. It's been a defining factor of really my entire life, but specifically when I was 15, decided to make Jesus Lord of my life. So I think that's obviously the first kind of thing. I work as a videographer. That's my day job. I work with different companies. Very, very exciting. I get to do different stuff. It's not as steady as some other stuff, and maybe we'll talk about that later, unfortunately, but it's very cool. You get to do different things just in that space. I live in Los Angeles.
Hey.
Your guys' family is from LA, and I love it here. I know there's a stereotype about LA, and it's dirty and the traffic's awful and all that stuff, but I just absolutely love living here. I can't really see myself living anywhere else, partly because my work is here, but I just very much love living here.
You're a videographer in Los Angeles, so that is the place to be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I am so glad you're here. I'm wondering, Josh, how did you get into videography? And by the way, when I looked around, I didn't stalk you, Josh. I did look around on your profile. The cleanness, the excellence of what you create, man, it was striking. I was like truly excited to have you on the show because you know your stuff. It was so cool to see that montage. You have a videography
reel.
Yeah. Man, that is slick. Yeah. So tell me how you got into videography in particular, and how have you grown as an artist because of all this hard work to become a better and better videographer?
Well, so I'll say what I've enjoyed. I just enjoy making stuff with people. I have this memory of I would have probably been about 10 years old. It's funny, filmmakers like name influences of theirs, and like a lot of them are like Lord of the Rings. For me, I wasn't necessarily old enough when Lord of the Rings came out. So it was actually the Hobbit trilogy, the prequel trilogy. I remember having that DVD or Blu-ray and watching the behind the scenes, and it was just this filmmaker, Peter Jackson, just like solving problems like with his friends essentially and working together on this project and being in these like crazy environments for long hours. And that was just like so appealing to me. So that's the thing I enjoy about videography the most is the people.
Yeah.
Everyone is working hard. And everyone is passionate about this common goal. Like we are pushing and we are working these hours all so that we can like make the best product possible and be proud of what we're making. And that's just so important to me. And it all feels worth it. That kind of stuff is worth it for me because it's like, we just want to make this awesome art that is like fully realized. And then I think in terms of growth, it's a couple things. I think there are people that can push you. Like I think a lot of it is self-taught. I started making movies when I was about 10 years old, and I just kept doing it. And you know, I would watch YouTube videos that were like, oh, this is how to like properly expose for your camera. This is how to get a little bit of a better shot when you're outdoors. And this is how to, something called J&L cutting. I don't know if you're familiar with in film. It's essentially.
You got to drop some lingo because you're such a cool guy. Keep going.
But you learn some of these things on your own, but then like I've had certain mentors that have just been so amazing for my growth. I had a place I worked at last year that I used their gear, and then it taught me like what gear I needed to purchase. And like I just wouldn't have known. Like, this is something that can get you nice, high quality images at a decent price. So I think it's you learn by yourself, and then by just doing it with mentors that are able to push you in a way that you can't really push yourself, and you can't really learn on your own or really on the internet.
I'll see. I asked you about your journey, and boy, that got you talking, Josh. You covered about 6 different things. So you started by talking about The Hobbit and how everybody has an influence. They have an experience with film if they go into film. So they have an experience with art and then want to live up to that, or they are inspired by that. And for you, it was The Hobbit and Peter Jackson behind the scenes. And you were somehow attracted to this creativity and chaos. You're digging it.
Yes.
And then you went into kind of these categories of art, people, and collaboration. There's something relational in what you're enjoying in your passion. And then you ended by talking about YouTube and mentoring. So both the technical, online, digital, glowing rectangle is helping you, but then you also have people. And I love that because what I'm trying to create is content for wisdom and contentment. So you're saying the wisdom came through the humans. And yes, can you go a little deeper, as they say in the podcast world, can you double click on the relational side of creating film and art? What is it that you enjoy so much about doing this with others?
Well, I think they say that a lot of people bond through activity. I think obviously there are friends that I have, and we talk about our feelings a lot and we delve into how we're feeling. But I think a lot of my friends, at least that was built through activity. I think that film is one of the best bonding experiences. I've gotten to bond so much with my entire cast and crew through this project. In particular, I would say probably the main character of the show. Her name is Tierra Bynum. And I didn't really know her that well before. And now I feel like we kind of have like brother-sister energy. We make fun of each other a lot. We have a lot of fun. And filmmaking is trial by fire. You're not in these like safe environments like a coffee shop with this even lighting and everyone's well rested. Like, it's like you're on a beach and you're in the water and you're being attacked by the waves and you're trying to get this shot. And you kind of bond in that way. And it can't really happen in ways that are safe in a sensory way. Yeah. So I think, and then you're working towards this common goal. And then with that, randomly someone will say, oh, this reminds me of that story in my life. And then you get to learn about them. I was talking to my producer, Candace Ray, about some script kind of decisions that I was making. And I was like, is anybody going to relate to this storyline? And I had that exact thing happen to me. And here's why. So you get to learn about people in an awesome way through filmmaking.
I love this. You said several things there. You said relationships in filmmaking lead to bonding. And you talked about a brother-sister relationship with one of your cast and crew.
Yeah.
And then you went into this interesting thing about how it's not safe. It's risky. It's not in a controlled environment. I suppose in some way you're saying in all of that, in the bonding, the learning, the asking, is anybody going to relate to this? You're checking and honing impact in the context of relationship and creativity. So as I say that, what's shifting for you?
Yeah, I think finding truth is the best way to put it. Like, I think I've tried to write short stories or novels on my own, and I would do it a lot more when I was a kid, and I think I appreciated it a lot more as a kid, but I've done it recently and I just can't find the creative spark in it. And I think that's because this project and a lot of the projects I make, I think they are the most truthful when they're made with others. Like, I have this process where I ask my actors, like, I write dialogue, but then I'm like, does this sound phony? Does this sound like there's this specific point that I'm trying to get at? How can this character get to this point? And does it necessarily need to be this exact phrasing? And it gets to that perfect place of truth through working together and sorting this thing out. Yeah.
So then you resonated with truth, and you said the way you find truth is actually in and through relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because this is a problem for everyone, but also maybe my generation, Gen Z. Sometimes we think things in our head and we think it's the truth, and we connect with, we'll say that thing out loud to another person. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, why would you ever believe that's true about yourself or the world or whatever? And it felt so true in our head. And then once we're in community or we're in a relationship, it gets exposed for what it is. I think it's true in art, where I'm like, this is going to be the funniest thing I've ever written. And then an actor will say it, and I'm like, that wasn't it. I think truth, like you're saying, like, I think truth can't be, oh, I just thought this on my own and haven't brought it to anybody and haven't presented it to anybody, and so it's automatically true. You have to, if you're a Christian, you have to obviously test it against the Bible, but you also just have to, even after you've tested it against the Bible, you have to test it against others who, are into the Bible and know their Bible, and say, hey, this is how I'm reading it. Does this make any sense? And they're like, that's a stupid way to read it. Obviously, it means this. And you look at it and you're like, oh, yeah, totally.
My last question on this is, So for pursuing truth in relationship, and you mentioned sitting with the Bible, sitting with the question, or sitting in the struggle to find truth, what uniquely is coming against Gen Z? Jumping ahead a little bit, but because we're talking about truth and checking with friends, I certainly don't want to make it sound like we need to fact check everything with our friends. And you mentioned the Bible, but then I'm thinking from where I sit, almost double your age, I'm sitting here going, what is hard is to let it be uncomfortable and not yet resolved. It's hard not to go into the doom scrolling. It's hard not to go into, I'll just watch a show. It's so easy to move away from our questions and our wondering, our disruption. What is uniquely challenging for Gen Z as they wrestle with questions of truth? What makes it hard for them to hang with the question long enough to get a breakthrough or clarity?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think, like I was saying, I think a difference with our generation is like we're much more in touch with our emotions. And I think that's true of men and women. And I think a lot of older generations think that's a bad thing. I can't speak to if that's the experience of other Gen Z people, but I know that's the experience for me, is we're very aware of what we're feeling. And yes, there is obviously the doom scrolling aspect and the kind of numbing out aspect. I know for me, that's not really something I do with my emotions. I tend to overthink them. And so I think in some sense, I think there is a time where you just have to you need to step away. And it is maybe you need to watch a movie or you need to talk to people or whatever, just because you've thought about it too much. It's time.
I got you. I appreciate you walking it out. And I think you're marking something that is important for us to talk about at some point, maybe on another show, maybe later today, is the perception of, is Gen Z too deep in their feelings? Are they just wildly anxious all the time? What's going on with them? I think those of us that are not in Gen Z can think that. Where we struggle, I think, is to truly demonstrate curiosity. And I think it's hard for the older generation to truly demonstrate courage to go and reach out to someone younger and risk the eye roll or the side eye. You cringy boomer, you cringy Gen Xer, what are you doing, man? So there is probably some self-talk in the older folks that is preventing us from asking. And then I think everybody is harassed by our devices, and it makes it incredibly hard to take a deep breath and slow the pace and with joy and presence approach another person. That is very hard to do. It's very hard to be authentic.
I had seen, it was some statistic on, I don't know if you're familiar with like the manosphere or like the red pill kind of section of the internet, but I was watching something on that and it told me 70% of Gen Z men have never asked out a woman in person. And then I thought about it and I was like, I don't think I've ever done that. So I made it a point to try that in the future. Your point made me think of that.
But then the question is, what is the spirit in which the manosphere or that part of the internet or the people we go to church with or even our parents, uncles, what is the tone of voice? What is the energy when we notice that? Are we like, oh, these kids these days? Or are we coming to that with curiosity and compassion? Those are two very different energies. I want to transition to, and this is connected, wisdom and contentment. What is wisdom for you at your age? What is your experience telling you is wisdom? I just wonder what those two words pull or evoke in you. Why did you take my invitation to come on a podcast about wisdom and contentment? Intergenerational conversations, wisdom and contentment.
Yeah. I think I took this because I like talking to you.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I have that effect on people.
You do. You guys, you and your wife visited my family a couple months ago, and we just had really nice conversation. And I was just remembering that. And so when you reached out, I was like, yeah, that sounds great. For me, it's an easy answer, but as a Christian primarily, I think wisdom is whatever's in the Bible. And I think making love the measure of all things, it's like the wisest thing to do is the thing that's going to be most loving for others and myself in the long run. Some of that is up to your discretion, or if you're asking what is wise, I think sometimes I think some of these decisions are not if I go to Chick-fil-A or McDonald's, and if that's the decision, what is wise? And then contentment, we were talking a little bit before you hit record, but I think it's been up and down for me, or at least, so I do freelance as of now for videography. And it's great because, again, like I shared, I get to do awesome stuff. I was just at a shoot last week. That was really fun. It was about the medical business, and I just got to do a cool shoot. I've been thanking God for moments and trying to find extra stuff, like in the moment, being like, thank you, God, that I'm here to experience this. Big moment for me was we were shooting the very last of the show 2 days ago on Thursday. And we were, like I shared earlier, we were like battling the waves, and we had to get this shot in the water. And the ocean water will just shock you with just how cold it is. I don't know if you've experienced that. I was I was unaware of how cold it was. And I was just in there with a camera, and the waves were just hitting me, hitting my camera. I fully thought my camera was broken for a second, which was terrifying. Feeling like I was living out my purpose and being creative in that moment. I was like, thank you, God, that I'm here to experience that. And moments with friends, different stuff like that, I try to remember and literally say, thank you, God, that I'm here to experience that. Because as humans, there is a brain negativity bias where we tend to focus on the negative. And so I think it's just good to remember, hey, this is a great moment, and this is what I'm going to remember. Maybe not forever, but this is just a nice memory that I have now.
You hit a couple of huge categories. You connected wisdom to love and discretion. And I heard you talk about it's not just Chick-fil-A or McDonald's. There is little discretion and there's big discretion. There's, where am I going to have dinner tonight? How do I find contentment when I'm a freelance artist? That requires some discretion. That requires some grappling with contentment. And when you went into contentment, you talked about the sense of contributing, sense of adding. And so you made quite a connection there as you went through it. And then you ended with talking about in the moment contentment. Could you talk a little more about that? What does that look like for you when you catch yourself and you're trying to recapture contentment? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think first of all, I feel very lucky that I'm still a very young person, but when I was even younger, probably a teenager, I was so anxious about living in the moment that I would not enjoy the moment. And I'd be like, oh, you got to live in this moment. You got to make sure you're enjoying it. If you're thinking about it too much in the moment, you're not present with the people you love or in the situation that you're very excited to be in. So I think just taking a moment of gratitude during that time is very helpful. And then just returning back to it and not being distracted by anxious thoughts if possible, or being distracted by your phone. I think that's a big one.
That's helpful. Do you think contentment is like overwhelming for your generation? Or do you think your generation actually can find contentment pretty easily?
It depends on how you define contentment. Do you mean like general contentment or like contentment in moments?
Because we're talking about in the moment, I just wonder, how easy is it for Gen Z to hold it? Because you talked about 2 ways to come back. And I wonder, is that something that Gen Z is uniquely struggling with, to come back in the moment? Or is it different? I guess I'm just trying to understand what might be the nuances of being Gen Z and battling with holding contentment.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a good question. I've heard this statement said about people with autism, but I think it can apply to a lot of groups. If you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. Each experience is different, and a lot of times you can't really make a blanket statement about everybody. I know it's true for me is that I've gotten better at it. And I do have friends around me that I feel like are very good at being content. I have a couple of roommates. One of them, his name is Reese, and I think he's the most content man that I've ever met. He goes to work, and then he comes home and he plays video games and he sings, and he's always excited about something. And so I think it's probably true of every other generation where there's some people who are very good at it and have grown in being able to enjoy the moment, and some people who aren't. I like to occasionally tell people, hey, I'm really enjoying this moment with you. This is really powerful. I was telling my lead actress, Tiara, when we were filming on Thursday, I was saying like, hey, this moment is really special for me. But I think people are probably just enjoying it and not thinking too much about it and not expressing it.
Simply saying it out loud, like pausing real quick to say, hey, I'm really enjoying this moment with you. I love that. I think that's so good. And it's very inexpensive, right? It's like sending a text. All you got to do is type it out and hit send. And the impact is, what have you noticed? What was the impact the other day when you told your lead actress, hey, I just want you to know right now I'm really enjoying this? What was the impact on her?
It's funny. She wasn't enjoying it as much as I was. She said, I'm glad you're enjoying this. I hate the water and I hate being here right now.
Oh, I bet.
But I think she was appreciative of how much I was enjoying myself. But like, we had another person who was working on the cruise named Spencer. And I was like, guys, I know I'm crazy for wanting to do this and enjoying this as well. He was like, you're doing what is in your brain and in some sense doing what you were made to do. And so I think he could appreciate that as well. I also don't care how people respond when I say, I appreciate this moment with you, because I'm like,
that's great.
I just need them to know it.
There you go. And they can think back on it later when they're not freezing cold in the water as your lead actress.
Yeah, and upset. Yeah. It's fair. Yeah.
That's great. Here's what I'm thinking, Josh. I think we're going to pause. This is a good halfway point. And then after a brief break, we will come back and do a little more talking specifically about the project. And then I would love to hear about intergenerational, your perception of how the older generation perceives y'all. And maybe you would ask me a question, and I would love to hear maybe a question you have for me. So I just want to remind, please, if you're enjoying anything about this conversation, do the digital votes, a like, a subscription, a comment, a rating of the podcast, sharing it with a friend. This matters and it gets the word out. If you enjoy it a little bit, there's a chance your friend might enjoy it even more. And so if you can just vote that way, I would really appreciate it. We will take a brief break and then we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Audible. If you like reading books, Audible. All right, we're back.
Josh, we're back. I have a question for you, Josh. We've been talking for over 30 minutes. And we will talk about your show. But in that first half, what are you sitting with? What is the impact on you of having me simply be here? What's helpful to you?
Yeah, there's a reason every loud friend has a quiet friend. And that's because the loud friend just likes to talk and the quiet friend just likes to listen. I think there's something really nice about people just listening to you. My roommate, Ben, that's how we are all the time. He'll just call me or we'll come home and he shut up and listen to what I'm about to say for 10 minutes because life is awful right now. And I'm like, great, I'm going to listen. And then I do the exact same thing to him. I think everyone needs a good listener.
Yeah. Great. Today's podcast is brought to you by Tap Water. Tap Water. Soothing throats for hundreds of years.
Yeah. Tap water. It's all right.
Oh, that's a good line too. In the spirit of being a little silly there, Josh, you got to tell me about Jesus Freaks, the social media sitcom. But I'm very excited to see what you've created, and you've spent a year creating it. So tell me a little bit about the journey, but why are you excited about this show? What's the impact you're trying to have?
The elevator pitch is that it's a sitcom about a Christian community, which I've never really seen. I think maybe the closest I would see is a show called Kim's Convenience, where there's like some scenes set in a church. I had the idea for a sitcom about a Christian community back in 2021, I want to say, so about 5 years ago. I went to film school, and so we had to come up with different ideas for pitches for films. So in the reel I posted, I have a mentor of mine. This is going to sound super name droppy, but he directed the movie Go that came out a couple months ago, the animated movie. And so he was working on that, but he needed some help with some reels of his own, like for his personal social media pages. And on that call, he had just brought up, he was like, I think that these micro dramas are the future. And I think that this is how people are consuming content anyway. And so let's bring it to them. Let's bring it to their attention spans in some way. I had this idea to create this show where about the community, and it's silly and it's funny and it's different Christian experiences, and you can make fun of all of them without having a super kind of through line that you would need in like a movie or a short film or something like that. There is definitely a through line throughout this season to an A plot and a B plot that are very important. But there are just a lot of silly jokes about being Christian and organized religion in general. I started writing this in June of last year, and it's just coming out at the end of April. I was able to execute on a bunch of different silly ideas that are all different, and they can talk about appointment television. People can keep coming back to see how this story kind of progresses, and they develop a parasocial relationship with the story and the characters in that way. And I can do that all within, I think the show, the total runtime of the season is probably going to be about 25 minutes, which, if you're keeping track, that is the length of one normal sitcom episode. I can tell a lot more story and a lot more progression in a much more accessible way, where the budget isn't going to be crazy. I don't have to have all this infrastructure for it.
Yeah. What are some categories of things that you find funny or that you play with in this series?
Yeah. I have a character named Joy, who is probably the second main character, and she fits into the stereotype of very sheltered Christian. She was in a church her entire life, and she's not aware of anything going on outside, essentially. We had this joke about she took this guy at a food court. She took cocaine from him because she thought it was breadcrumbs, because she's like, I don't even know what cocaine is. So we have those kind of jokes. So she's a character who plays on that. And at least at the beginning of the show, she's a very uptight Christian. People actually find it funny. Is this idea of some Christians just being a little too uptight? I think there is definitely in our world the very opposite happening a lot of times, where people aren't taking it serious enough. But I think on the other end, I've encountered and also been a Christian who is taking it, I don't even want to say too seriously, because I don't think you can take it too seriously, but limiting themselves and just very uptight in a way that isn't consistent with how God wants us to live. I think episode 5 was one of my favorite ones to write, and I think editing it is one of the funnier ones in my opinion, because that episode it's set entirely before a church service, and it's just the tech team trying to figure out everything going on before the service and all the fires they have to put out. It's just a lot of jokes about how Christians worship and how people who serve have to like take care of each other and take care of everything right before the actual service starts, and how people may not realize if they don't serve that it's like everything is hanging on by a thread. Like it's like every major decisions can be made 2 minutes before the service starts, and that's like pretty normal. And then just jokes about like satire about how churches are structured and how services are carried out. I think that's a lot of the fun I was having. Yeah.
Sweet. So you talked about the uptight and like the realities or the logistics or the just having fun with kind of the chaos that it is to be getting a last minute change. We're just going to change all the songs. We're not going to do all those songs 2 minutes before church.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So a lot of Christian folks will relate to this. And if you're not a Christian, and maybe that Christian is a bit uptight, I'm curious about the impact you ultimately want to have, and on whom do you want to have the impact?
I think this show is for everybody. This show is not for Christians. It's not for non-Christians. It's for everybody. I think, I forget who said it, but there's a comedian who talks about some jokes are funny even though people don't get the jokes. Yes. And so I think a person who's not a Christian watching an episode about a tech team and how they organize things, they may not necessarily get the jokes, but I think hopefully they can still see the humor in it. And I think Christians are maybe going to have a little bit of an extra layer. I've been through that, so I think that's a little bit funnier. But I think it's for everybody. I think I would hope that the impact would be, if you're not Christian, that like you would consider entering into a community or at least looking into that for yourself. But the show was definitely not made for any direct evangelical purposes. It was made so that people can laugh and maybe see a little bit of themselves in these characters and maybe not take themselves so seriously if that's what's going on. But I think laughter is just like such a gift, and it's such an important part of life. And life is hard. Let's just have some laughter. I like the idea that someone would be coming from a hard day of work, and just for a minute and a half, both of those weeks' episodes, because we're releasing them twice a week, can just make them laugh and forget about their problems or just bring a little bit of joy to them.
I just want to say thanks for taking the risk. To spend a year to build what ends up being 25 minutes of footage is a lot. It's a huge risk. It's a huge investment of time and effort and creativity and coordinating. and pulling people together. It's hard to pull people together. I don't know how hard it was for you. What are the others, the cast and crew, excited about? What have you noticed or been surprised by as they do the acting and they live it out? What are they getting excited about in terms of impact?
With my producer, Candace, she's just been a cheerleader this entire time. Yeah, I keep making jokes like, why are we even doing this? What's going on? And I know I overextend myself. I know I do too much. We were shooting on Sunday, and she was like, don't worry, like, people are going to be dressing as Javi, Joy, Charlie, like, for Halloween or whatever, and you're going to have fans and stuff like that. And I was like, that's very nice. I know she's joking, but she's been very encouraging of this process, and I think she just is really excited to bring the script to life. She was very excited. I think the actors, particularly Tira Bynum, who plays Charlie, the main character, and then Chanel Lee, who plays the character of Joy, I saw them get most excited when they had more for their characters to do and more substance to their characters. This show initially was 8 episodes. When we started shooting it, it was 8 episodes. And then I added the B plot relatively late in the game. I finished writing it around February. My mentor was like, it needs an episode 0. And so the first episode didn't exist until around January. Now it's going to be about 14 episodes. Chanel and Tia were very excited because they were like, there's more to these characters and more I can play with rather than them being one-dimensional. And that's the thing I've noticed excites the actors the most, is the characters being a little more fleshed out, the basic vehicles for jokes about Christian.
In the same way that you are excited at the fullness of the characters in your show, I am aware that God is totally excited about our whole being. There is no shame. There is no blame. There is no judgment from God. He loves us as characters in his drama. And in the same way, you kind of love these characters, Josh. I'm sure that you're just so excited to see them do their thing and see how they impact the audience. Guess what?
Absolutely.
God is excited about you in all of your fullness, me in all of my fullness, my boys, your parents, me and my wife. Sometimes in Christianity, we bring a sense of shame and a primary identity as a sinner. And then we do silly things like you might be making fun of in the show because we're under a misconception. And God, in fact, laughs. God has a sense of humor. God does hilarious things, right? And I think Jesus even had a sense of humor. And you can see it in between the lines in Scripture. But the whole while, it's not a negative, biting, cynical humor. Like, look at you, you're hilarious. Like we all laugh at a toddler. I think in the same way, maybe God does that. So that's just what's occurring to me. I'm very excited to see the show, and I hope that it's very successful.
Thank you.
What are you proudest of? Just in wrapping up the show plug, what are you most proud of in this whole project?
That's interesting. I think I'm proud of, so the B plot of this show is a love story, but it's not a traditional love story. Unfortunately, in film, there's kind of 2 types of love stories, or maybe I'm just talking about fiction in general. Okay. There's like the traditional, we just fall for each other, and maybe there's some very superficial obstacles, but then live happily ever after. Or this is the worst person in the entire world that is treating this person in a relationship, and it's about this person leaving. And because of very superficial reasons, usually it's like cheating or abuse or something like that. I'm not saying that those stories don't need to be told, but I think those are the only stories that are told traditionally. And so I think the B plot is this love story that I think is nuanced and different and maybe not altogether happy, but I think reflects the experiences of a lot of people, especially Christians, because the temptation is for someone to just hate and, this is the worst person in the entire world, and handling it in a way that's loving. And Jesus calls us to love everyone in that sense, figuring out yourself and the other person. So I'm very proud of that. I think the episode that highlights this most is episode 12. We shot that one with a lot of cool lights, like a lot of purple, orange, red light, like very distinct. And we cut it to some music. And it's the most heavy on the B plot episode. And I'm just very proud of how that one turned out. I think if I were to show one episode out of the entire series to someone and be like, look what I did, I'm proud of this, it'd probably be that one. So I think that's probably what I'm most excited to do. Yeah.
Well, I asked you what you're most proud of, and you said 3 different things. So that tells me that you're very proud of your work, which is good. That is, again, I believe that is just old man to young man. I'm telling you, I think that's the image of God in you. I think God is very proud of us. Why else would he say in Genesis, oh, this isn't just good, this is very good. So I'm glad that you're excited about it. Now, I have a final moment here, and really it's a 2-part moment, Josh. I'm curious, in your experience, what are the biggest generational misses between, let's say, Gen Z, millennials, and Gen X? Maybe up to boomers, which would be like your grandparents. But what do you think are some of the biggest misunderstandings, and what maybe is 1 or 2 ways we could start to work on some of those misunderstandings intergenerationally?
Yeah, I think I'll start with the criticism of, or the thing I find with the older generations, because I'd like to end on a high note, but I think sometimes Gen X and boomers, the boomer generation, kind of misunderstand, again, Gen Z being too in touch with their emotions, and in particular, being too in touch of when they're burnt out. I think there is like this, there is this kind of movement in Gen Z that talks about mental health and taking mental health days and resetting and that kind of stuff. And I think there is this criticism of like, why can't you just work like we did, work hard like we did? And I think that there is absolutely laziness. I think, again, not all Gen Z people are like, there is some laziness going on with that. But I think that we're just a lot better at being in touch with what's good for us and the amount of work that is not good for us. I think we're in touch with the amount of work that would separate us from God and not allow us to live out our relationship with Him, or the amount of work that would cause us to be super stressed and irritable with the people that we love. And that's not healthy, because then you're not having a healthy relationship with your romantic partner or your friends or your family, and you're not having a healthy relationship with yourself. Sometimes the older generation doesn't understand that and thinks, blanket statement, Gen Z is lazy, they're not willing to work this much. That's what I would say.
Okay.
I think
on that one, Josh, where does that come from? Where did Gen Z get that message about Gen X and boomers?
I've heard it from older people in my life, definitely.
Great. With your own ears, you've heard those comments made about your generation.
Yes.
There you go. And that's what I want to mark is like, you're not saying that because you watched 80 million TV shows that just cast Gen Z in that light, although that may be happening. It's your lived experience. And that's what I want to say to anyone that's listening or watching is Gen Z isn't internalizing this out of nowhere. And Gen X is comparing 2 different experiences, 2 completely different childhoods, 2 completely different relationships with emotions, mental health, and taking self-care or having boundaries and limitations and awareness of how hard we're working. Thanks. What might be one other misunderstanding? It sounded like you had one more.
I think we have one in the opposite sense, where I think my generation, unfortunately, I think there's maybe just a lack of respect for older generations. I think there is that. A couple years ago, there was like the OK Boomer meme. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, but, Boomer feels like a bad word to me. It feels like a cuss word when people say it in my direction. I feel like, ooh. Yeah, it's like a pejorative word. It's almost a word that's like the middle finger for me. It just feels like a, wow, man, why'd you have to go there?
Yeah. I think in the same way that Gen X or boomers can blanket statement, all young people do this, all young people are lazy, whatever.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times younger people can assume that a lot of older people are racist, or a lot of older people are offensive, or don't have compassion for marginalized groups. I'm like very excited when I see an older director that makes something incredibly meaningful. One of my favorite movies of the last few years is called The Fabelmans. It was a coming of age story about Steven Spielberg, and he is, I don't want to say in his 80s, but I think he's in his 70s. He made one of the most beautiful pieces of art that I've seen in the last couple of years. So it is very exciting to me when I get to step into the experience of someone a little bit older and see, oh, you definitely still have something to contribute. You definitely still have something to teach me. And it's not just Uncle Boomer, your time's gone, it's my time now kind of thing.
Okay. And so again, the question, have you personally experienced boomers and Gen X to be like you were describing, out of touch, racist, kind of aggressive, really insensitive, not paying attention, not reading the room? Has that been your personal experience, or is that caricature just coming from memes and media?
No, I've absolutely experienced it. And it is also this thing where older generations are just not aware that of things that offend certain racial groups or sexual orientations. And it's not even with the intent to offend, but they're just out of touch with the lingo. And then I've heard it personally. And I think a lot of times the younger generations will not want to educate and will be like, that's just a racist person. No, you just need to teach them what's kind to this ethnic minority or this marginalized group or whatever. There are jokes online, but most of it, I've seen it.
Okay. And so then humor is actually based in experience and in some level of truth, even when we're making fun, poking fun, or even being viciously sarcastic.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a reason that it's funny. Yeah.
Yes. And isn't that interesting? I grew up thinking funny was simply funny, but I didn't understand why it was funny. And so I feel like over my life, as someone that loved Saturday Night Live, that loved sitcoms in the 70s and 80s, I grew up on TV, I didn't quite understand what made things funny. I've also grown to understand that being white, there is a way that white people think things are funny. There's also a kind of humor that goes with each cultural group, and I find that fascinating. And I think there's a really important story behind what different groups find funny. I think there's a great example of that in your generation and younger, when you are chuckling on the couch looking at a meme, and then you turn the phone, if you dare to do that with your cringy Gen X parents. I've done this so many times with Colin and Ian. I'm like, okay, show me. And every once in a while, they'll show me.
Yeah.
So they'll take a risk, and then I don't get it.
Yes.
And I'm like,
unfortunately,
I think I'm a pretty funny guy. I think I'm pretty in touch with the human condition, but I cannot figure out what makes this funny. Yeah. So they know, and y'all know, but because of our difference in our relationship with media and our relationship with ourselves, our definition of funny is just so different. But I think I can start to understand it, and that is what I want. And ultimately, I'm making my boys cringe, but I'm going, why is this funny? Like, walk it out for me. And I think they think, dude, it's as easy as a knock-knock joke. Why do you not get this? A test, in a way. I feel like I fail the test frequently. By way of conclusion, Josh, we're just about done, and I'm so glad you joined me. Again, your show is called Jesus Freaks. It comes out on
Monday, April 27th, 14 episodes, and it's going to release every Monday and Thursday.
All right. So I'm very excited for that. I want to be sure before we end that a couple of things. I will put either the show or your Instagram in my notes. I also want to remind people, please do, whether it's Josh's content or this content, please subscribe, rate, and share.
Yes.
If you enjoy any moment in it, pay it forward. It's the least you can do. People are working so hard to create content, and sometimes I think we take for granted what they've done. We have a chuckle, but we don't actually like it or send it along to someone else, and that really helps. So I do want to put in a quick plug for that. And then my final question for you, Josh, is what question are you sitting with that you want to ask me as someone that is not in your generation and doesn't understand your memes? What are you sitting with lately? What would you love to have people outside of your generation and their perspective speak into in your life?
I've asked people of your generation this before, but I think it's such an interesting question to me. Have you...
Get my pen ready, Josh. I'm writing the question.
Okay.
I take this very seriously.
Okay, I think I'm looking at the beginning of my career, and I'm wondering, how has life panned out for you so far in terms of meaning? Do you feel like at this point in your life, you're able to say, I still got some accomplishing left to do, but I've accomplished a lot of these things in the world that I was meant to accomplish and meant to accomplish at the beginning of my life, even if it wasn't planned necessarily exactly like it panned out.
Yes.
But do I feel like I've left an impact on the world? Do I feel like I've made the world a better place? Do I feel like I was kind to people? Do I feel like I impacted people's lives positively? Whether that's in an artist's case, hopefully I'm able to impact with this series and just with my art in general. Or if it's you're a therapist and you've positively helped someone's life in the way they think. Have you been able to do good that's butterfly affected out into the world and actually presented real measurable impact that wouldn't be there if you weren't here on this planet? And I want to, because that's what I want for my life. I want to be your age or be older, be 70, 80, and say, I've left my stamp on this world in a positive way. I've left it a better place than I found it, whether that's through art that makes someone laugh or art that makes someone feel less alone, or it's not through art at all. It's through the relationships I've had with people, helping the poor, helping the needy, making sure people just feel less alone. So that's the question I would ask.
Okay. I'm glad I was taking notes. So here's
there's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. You're asking as someone at the beginning of your career, and you're saying, how at 50 plus has life panned out in terms of meaning? So one, what a deep question, but then you walked it out a little bit. Because when you say meaning, you're talking about the difference between what I intended to do and what actually happened.
Yeah.
Have I improved the world? Was I kind? Have I had a positive impact? What is the good that I have brought? Has it rippled out? Again, back to impact. Have I left my stamp? Have I done that through art? Have I done that through relationships? Have I done that through helping? So I hear your question, and it's a multi-layered question. And so if you're asking me how I look at my life at almost 55, it certainly went differently than I thought, not going to lie. I thought at this point I would be either leading a school or leading other leaders of schools. And in my first attempt to be a school leader, I was an assistant principal, and it just went very different and very hard, way different than I planned on. And it was disappointing, like in a big way. And it was affecting me in a deep way. I cannot tell you how overwhelming the anxiety, speaking of Gen X not being in touch with their feelings, it's quite a thing to sit on your couch in the morning with tears running down your face because of the anxiety, in my case, that I did not want to go to work with a perfectionist. I did not want to go to work with a workaholic, but I had to. There's something that's being built there that's truly beautiful, but boy, I paid a price, and my wife paid a price, and my boys paid a price as I brought home stress and handled it the best that I could. I think I'm more in touch with my emotions than the average Gen X person. I think I talk more than the average man. I think I have a higher emotional intelligence than the average man. And it was still so incredibly hard. And it was partly because my boss was almost like a masculine, hardline woman, type A. And so her characteristics were what would traditionally or has historically been associated with hard driving male. And I think part of the disruption was feeling not okay as a man in education. In elementary school, you don't see a whole lot of men in education, for one thing.
Right.
So there was some gender things swirling there that I don't have time to walk out right now. But then, so meaning, what am I really after? I wanted to bring joy and influence to a place where little people come every day to get learning and to get influenced. I wanted to bring goodness and truth and beauty, and I felt like constantly thwarted as I tried to do that. So you were asking, where am I at now? How has it panned out? I will say, one, very differently than I thought. Two, I paid more than I thought I was going to have to pay in terms of pain and energy and sacrifice and character. And I learned that the central question in my life, my central protest, is why does this all have to be so hard? If you boil down everything I complain about, Josh, it's why does this have to be so freaking hard? And I think I've come to accept that. I recognize that's the way I roll. And instead of bringing shame to it, I think I accept that is my default. My wife brings a different resignation or a different central question or protest. And so because sometimes we don't have respect for each other, we get frustrated with each other because her way of operating and my way of operating are different.
Yeah.
And when you're suffering at your job, it's so hard to stay united with your family, with your wife, with the people you love the most, because I think I was very dysregulated. So it's hard to relate well to someone that's not well regulated. So I have a lot to say. Have I improved the world? Yes. I feel like everybody I've treated with kindness, this is why I love feedback. So whether it's comments online or if you're a school leader of any kind, you're going to get feedback from your people. A lot of times it's anonymous. The feedback was by and large very positive. I know that I'm a human and kind, present, and emotionally intelligent leader. I know that I show up for people that way, and it's not just my opinion. I have feedback. So over time, as a young person, you're going to collect feedback. Hopefully, you throw out the very worst feedback and you throw out the very best feedback and kind of optimize for what's in the middle and be sober in your estimate of yourself. I think about, has the good rippled out? And recently I feel like it has, because since that terrible but necessary stage in my life where the job was so hard, now I'm in my happy place. So I think life is cyclical. And so now I'm on an upswing. And what I'm doing now is a lot of creativity. I'm gathering men every single month to talk about feelings, which almost sounds like the punchline to a joke. Hey, man, do you want to come over to my house and talk about your feelings?
Yep.
But that's exactly what we're doing. And so what I've seen is those men that are coming to sit around my fire, I see them other days of the week and they're connecting with one another. And that would not have happened if I didn't take the risk to feel a little bit maybe out of my gender, because I'm more in touch with my feelings in Gen X. And I offered it anyway.
Specifically Gen X men.
Right. I didn't feel congruent with the caricature of what a man of my age should be or how we should act. But I went ahead and just did what felt right to me. And it looked like sitting around a fire every fourth or fifth Saturday and talking about writing that we're reading about emotions. And it wasn't a Bible study group. It was about, guys, we're going to get honest. We're going to be vulnerable. We're going to talk about what's really happening. And don't get on your soapbox. Don't take us to church right now. Be vulnerable. Tell us what you are dealing with related to that quote that you just read from the book. And I know that has had an impact. I feel like I've come into my identity, and I did that at 50. So when your dad says, oh, I can't wait to do what I really love to do, what I do think Gen Y and younger need to hear is that the way life seems to work is that there's always a price to pay, and then you get the payoff. But I think the misconception is that somehow with the right app or a $29.99 a month subscription, we can hack life and get the results and get the likes and go viral sooner. That's not true. Most people don't make the NBA, and most people do not blow up and break the internet. The rest of us, the 99% of the rest of us, have to work for it. And we will make progress over time if we stick to it. If we got our wildest dreams today, we probably wouldn't have the character to manage that wild dream coming true today. And it would spoil us, or we would be selfish, or we would not bring goodness and truth and beauty. We would somehow hijack it and make it about us. And so I'm going to land the plane here. I think what you're doing is you're trying to bring goodness and truth and beauty ultimately to shine the light on and point back to God. You mentioned that earlier. I think what I am trying to do has the same purpose. I'm just in a different category. I'm over here in elementary schools every day. And on the side, I'm building content to help generations connect with each other.
Having that group. Sorry,
yeah, and I'm having the group. And I would love to wake up every morning and no longer trade my time for money over at Denver Public Schools. I would like to get up full time, have appointments, ride my bike, have coffee with my wife, have conversations with my family, and get online or go travel and visit people and interview them and collect these stories of how God is connecting the generations, not dividing them. I think that's a beautiful tapestry and story. So that's what I think of when I think of, oh, I wish I was just free to do what I want to do at retirement. That's what I think about. And I think everybody that's getting close to retirement needs to conceive of what would you do if you were not trading your time for money, and get excited about that. What you don't want is to retire and have no idea what in the world you want to do. Now, if in your case, if you can make money doing what you love now, then there is no need to retire. But what I'm not talking about is retiring and just sitting in a lazy boy and watching a lot of TV. So that was my long answer to your long, multi-layered question. And it's only the first chapter. Like, we could have 8 more podcasts just about that one question you asked.
It's true.
So as we close, Josh, what are you sitting with? What did you enjoy about our conversation today?
You mentioned earlier, just like how much you were listening. People just need someone to talk to occasionally. I like having an actual dialogue about being intergenerational and not just alien, saying they're the other and like they're not to be trusted. I'm actually bridging that gap and actually hear an answer about, did you create meaning? And it sounds like you're like, yes, but not in the exact way that I thought I would, but I still create meaning. And life is hard, but I feel like I've had an impact. It's good to actually hear answers to those questions, because I do think about this a lot.
Yeah. I'm really happy to hear that. I will say, Josh, you're recapping what I said, reminded me of one more thing. As long as we keep God at the center of the story, we will, in fact, have a good and true and beautiful impact. If, this is a huge tipping point, if Josh makes it about Josh, if Michael makes it about Michael, something will disintegrate with the goodness and the truth and the beauty. We cannot be the main character, in my opinion. So that's my hot take to finish. And you made me think of it by listening to me. See, you did it for me. You listened, and then I had one more thought. Josh Nascimento, lead creator on the Jesus Freaks social media sitcom. Thank you for coming on the show. And I wish you a whole lot of success. And I want to close with this, Josh. I love you. Your family loves you. Josh, you are enough. Thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. This was amazing.